Welcome, both of you. Thank you for being here. So we're going to talk about the racial pay gap in influencer marketing that you've done plenty of research on and in a new phase of research. I'm just going to introduce you both. Neil is managing partner across social and influencer at MSL. He's had a more than 20-year career in social and digital, and he's worked in loads of different agencies across PR, creative and media. He's worked with clients like Coke, PlayStation, Adobe and Disney, and even helped to launch One Direction to the world, which he apologises for, but I'm very grateful for. Thank you very much, Neil. Before MSL, Neil was managing partner of social media entertainment specialist Way to Blue, and he also had a 4-year stint at Golin as head of social and content there. Neil, welcome.
Thank you.
Tineke Bernard is a UK-based influencer and public speaker. In the spring of 2020, Tineke compiled a directory of black influencers in the UK, which garnered viral attention and helped many influencers get their work in front of brands and agencies who'd never had access to that cohort before, and we're delighted to have Tineke with us.
Thank you very much.
Neil, so you joined MSL in January to head up the influencer marketing practice. How are you helping clients to win in this space?
I think, a couple of years ago, MSL relaunched the proposition around belief. And the idea that the value of a business is intrinsically linked to the values of a business. So in a kind of values-based world, influencer marketing is a really interesting proposition because I believe that influencer marketing can build belief like no other medium, when done properly, of course. And why? Well, it's one of the last true opt-in kind of mediums in a kind of post-ad block world. And the connections we often make with influencers are really based around passion points, beauty, makeup, cooking, in my case, free jazz between 1967 to 1973, right?
It's very specific.
Just me. But it's the connections we make with influencers are fundamentally around shared passions, which is really powerful. But I think fundamentally what's the challenge with influencer marketing is there are some issues facing the industry. It's still very much on that kind of drive towards maturity, and there are still kind of quite a lot of unknowns in that space. And I think from my perspective, the value exchange in the influencer marketing space just fundamentally isn't really working. For clients are kind of often getting quite lazy, unimaginative executions. Not everywhere, of course, but it is fairly common. And I think influencers themselves as well are getting the raw end of the deal. There's quite a lot of manipulation, and there's obviously a pay disparity, which is one of the things we're talking about today.
So how are you looking to address these issues?
So, I think in a way it kind of reminds me of the social media boom of 10 years ago, where it's that Wild West period where a new medium is trying to be adopted. We're all having the same conversations about measurement that I was having 10 years ago about social media as well. From our perspective, we feel that the influencer marketing industry needs to open up to better creativity. Quite a lot of influencer marketing is but fundamentally based on lists rather than brilliant insight-led creative ideas. Open up to better commerce. The idea of measurement is something that we are, as an industry, kind of quite obsessed with, just as we have been for social media before it. Open up to community, understanding the fact that what we're trying to do is actually influence the communities of these influencers, and of course, open up to culture. Open up to the things that the kind of the barometer of the world through the things that we care about and we talk about. And that last point around culture is one of the key issues that we're exploring with our investigation into the racial pay gaps that we're seeing in influencer marketing. Something that we've kind of all inherently know exists, but we haven't really had the data until recently to explore.
So tell me how you measure the impact of influencer marketing. How do you judge whether it's been a successful campaign?
Well, that's the $1 million question, isn't it? I think, look, it's often kind of objective-led, whether we're trying to drive traffic to an e-commerce platform, whether we're trying to brand build, whether we're trying to create something which is, I guess, short-termist versus long-term. There are lots of different implications, but I think one of the things that makes influencer marketing hard is the decentralized nature of influencer marketing, the ability to track the effectiveness of campaigns stops and is spread across multiple different areas. So it's something that we're exploring at the moment. It's something that I know a lot of peers from other agencies are also exploring at the moment. We should have some more news of that later in the year.
Okay, watch this space on the management front. So last year, let's get to the research you've been doing together. You looked at the racial pay gap in America.
Yes.
Tell us a bit about why you did that and what your findings were.
I guess the impetus around this was, as I said, there was this feeling that the industry, an open secret, I guess, that there was a pay disparity, but there hasn't been the data yet to prove it. So last year, our amazing colleagues in America commissioned a piece of research to look at the influencer pay gap in North America, partnering with an organisation called the Influencer League, which is essentially a body that helps training and learning and development for influencers. And what we found was quite shocking. We knew we were going to find a pay gap, but actually the data was more shocking than we thought it was going to be. The pay gap that we saw between white and BIPOC influencers, so it's Black, Indigenous and people of colour, was 28%.
Gosh.
But even more alarming, when we looked at just Black influencers, that a pay gap rose to 35%.
Goodness me.
Which, and analysing the data, that pay gap is the largest pay gap of any industry in North America, from teachers to construction workers to athletes. This is the largest pay gap by quite a big margin across the US.
And is there any indication as to why the pay gap exists? Where this is all
this is part of the research is not just the headline stats, but it's of course trying to understand what are the drivers of inequality. There are a large number of different factors. Firstly, education was a key factor. Particularly around education, around how to negotiate. Quite often, agencies are coming to influencers with fees that are lower because we're all trying to drive value for our clients and we're all trying to drive profitability as a business. But there is a lack of education and training in terms of influencers to negotiate higher rates. And that's something that we're really focusing on in the UK research as well, to understand those drivers. Secondly, there's just not an open conversation about how much to charge for this stuff, And even this week, we were looking at a campaign, and an influencer that had 8,000 followers was charging more than someone that had 120,000 followers.
Right.
There's not a simple formula yet that can help us drive, I guess, a universal rate card, and maybe that shouldn't even be a thing. But certainly, what we're trying to do is to, I guess, continue more open conversation about rates, and the data that we are compiling both in the UK and the US will be publicly available so that we can start to kind of begin a more open conversation. There are lots of reasons, so bear with me. One of the other main issues was that Black influencers, in particular 50% of the Black influencers that we interviewed in the US said that race was an issue, and particularly those that spoke out about racial injustice saw that their opportunities and their fees dropped straight after. And this week was the second anniversary of the murder of George Floyd. So around that time, when people were speaking up about that issue, brands decided to back away from partnerships, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, that's not walking the talk, is it?
No. A whole host of reasons, but I think in summary, it's the fact that the industry is not really talking about what money really, the lack of training, and the issues of speaking out against racial injustice negatively affect the opportunities for non-white influencers.
Okay, is there anything around platform algorithms and how they work?
Yeah, it's something, again, that we don't have the data yet, but we do feel that there might be something inherently within the algorithms of the social platforms that is potentially driving discrimination in terms of reach of content and engagement as well. So that's when we don't have the data yet, but it's something that certainly from a qualitative perspective, from interviewing influencers, they assume is a big issue they want to help uncover.
Were there any positive findings at all?
Yeah, I mean, one of the most positive outlooks from the US research was that there's definitely parity at the top. Larger influencers, the macro influencers, the pay gap is still there, but it's much smaller. And part of the reason that there is perhaps more parity at the top is some of those have representation. They have agents who are fighting their corner, mitigating one of the key challenges that we're seeing in influencers with mid or lower numbers, that they are fighting for better pay for themselves rather than having an agent fight for them. So it's it's good news, but it's still kind of indicative of the challenge we're facing.
And what are you doing at MSL specifically to help kind of even out this pay gap?
Sure. So in the US, we have sponsored 1,000 influencers to take on the Influencer League training to try and help them with education and to address that key insight around negotiation skills. Our proprietary influencer tool, Fluency, which is used across MSL offices around the world, we are plugging that data into Fluency as well to try and surface an equal playing field in terms of influencer selection, but also putting as well kind of monetary data in there so that we can in some cases say, no, we should be paying you more.
Right. Okay.
In other cases as well, we are committed to talking about this issue. As Tin and I have been saying a lot over the last month, part of the main challenge is just continuing to talk about this openly. We're just about to announce the second iteration of the US research, and we'll continue to do this in the UK as well next year.
Tell me a bit more about that influencer training. What does that cover apart from negotiation skills? I haven't come across that before.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It covers the whole gamut in terms of from a creative perspective, in terms of the kind of key trends to optimize your content, the hard skills around negotiation, as I mentioned. But also, I guess, there's more of a lifestyle element to it as well. Being an influencer is hard work. And it requires, as Tim will definitely attest to, but it requires a lot of effort. And sometimes that work-life balance is, in terms of your day job or your family commitments, and then going home and shooting content to try and get more engagement, to try and get brands to give you more money, is a cycle that kind of needs to be broken. So it's almost a kind of a life coaching element too, to kind of how you can balance all this stuff together.
Yeah, a lot more becoming a lot more professional.
Yeah.
In other words. So back to the pay gap research. You're midway through doing this in the UK now.
Yes.
The American
study. We're midway through, and I think in the UK, we obviously wanted to continue our focus on racial pay gap, but equally, I think that we wanted to uncover broader data around gender identity, sexuality, age, and also verticals. Do gaming influencers get paid more than beauty and fashion influencers? So we're trying to uncover as much data as possible because more data equals more evidence equals more change. So we're midway through, and we're really pleased in the UK to work with two partners in this. The first one in Charlotte from an agency called 76, who are actually really independent business, black owned, that looks at influencers from a diversity and inclusion perspective in terms of training, development and representation. And actually Charlotte and the agency published a pay gap report 2 years ago that really inspired us as well, called Lifting the Lid. And so, when we decided to do this in the UK and continue the great work in the US, we wanted to build an allyship with her and bring her on board to help produce the UK research. So as well as Charlotte from 7/6, who's actually off planning her wedding, so she couldn't be here today. We also amazing to work with Tin, who's actually an influencer that MSL has worked with in the past on our client AXA, and we just obviously love working with her. I'm very inspired by what she has done as an influencer to try and level the playing field.
And how are your two partners actually feeding into research? How's that partnership working?
Variety of different ways, from literally helping us make sure that we're asking the right questions, using the right language on our surveys, to I guess just promotion. Tineke, as we'll talk about in a minute, founded the Black Influencer Directory. Charlotte also has some amazing connections in that space too. So it was really about how we could come together and not just come in as MSL and kind of ignore the work that others have done already, but kind of be an ally to people that have been doing this for a while and come together and collaborate.
Tineke, what have your experiences been around pay gap in influencer marketing?
That there definitely is one. There's a really, obviously, as Neil said, there's, the 25, 35% in the US one. I've seen it being much bigger.
Really?
I've had, personally, I've had contracts come to me that weren't for me to sign with an extra zero on it. And you're like,
okay.
Well, that's interesting, like an extra zero. And then they're like,
Wow.
we're so sorry that's someone else's. And, you sit there and you look at their reach, their engagement, their size of audience, and there's not much between it, but there's a whole extra zero on their contracts than yours. And, that speaks to, it speaks to our ability to negotiate. It speaks to how people value us. And, it can be really soul destroying and makes you think, should I even bother if, I'm not being valued, or, what's the point? Because they obviously want to work with you, but not enough to pay you as much as they're paying your peers. So it exists, and there's loads of group chats. Influencers do talk to each other. So, we will have a group chat and kind of go, has this person approached you? What have they offered? What have you gone in at? Was it accepted? And we try amongst ourselves to try and, bridge that gap and kind of even the playing field a bit. But not everyone has that. If you don't have those networks and those connections, and you don't make those secret WhatsApp groups, you can find yourself really undercharging yourself.
And then what do you push back when it's clear that brands are trying to underpay you for the work?
Yeah, I think it's really important to kind of have your base level as well, what you're willing to accept. And if it's below that, I will push back, and I'm happy to lose that contract rather than rather than be underpaid. Sometimes you push back and they're willing to have that talk. Other times you can push back and, you lose the contract because, for whatever reason, they've decided that's your value and aren't willing to move from that.
Okay. So tell me about the UK Black Influencers Directory that you launched in 2020. What was the catalyst?
So it was literally weeks after George Floyd's murder and the Black Lives Matter riots and movement. And there were lots of brands and lots of agencies and lots of just influencers that was very much performative allyship. So, it was lots of, oh my gosh, this is terrible. Here are 5 black beauty bloggers you must follow. Or here are 5 black influencers you must follow. This is us showing that we're making a difference. And it's always the same 4 or 5 people. Always. And it's not to say that they're not great. They're great, really brilliant influencers. And people will pipe them up going, there's so many more black people than these 5 people. And I kind of popped into some of these chats to say, yeah, I can give you 250 off the top of my head. And of course, someone won't go on them. Right, okay. So I like a challenge. I went home that night, and being a blogger for 10 years or so by that point, I had these connections and I'd had lists because this directory wasn't new. It's something I had done in a smaller scale year after year for many years so that people could find each other. So I pulled it all together and came back the next day with a list of about 250 black influencers from many different genres. It's a really dirty, basic, like Excel timetable-y thing looking. It's awful. Right? But I just wanted to do it that day, so I put it up, and really awful. I've not changed it since, but it's doing the job. and it got shared and picked up, and you know, overnight there was like 20,000 views of this really awful looking database. But it showed that one, there was a need for it, and two, people they wanted this, they used it. I had loads of brands and PRs messaging me to say, one, this should be behind a paywall. Why are you just giving this information? And two, this is really useful. Now I can go back to my bosses, I can go back to our clients and say, you know, let's include some of these people. Yeah. So it's being used, and it's still being used on a daily basis today, which is brilliant.
And have some of the influencers on that list given you feedback about whether it's increased the amount of approaches they're getting from brands?
So quite a few have come back and said thank you, and which is brilliant. They said, you know, they've got really brilliant brand deals because they've now been able to be put in front of these brands, which is awesome. That's why it's not behind a paywall, because I didn't want any excuse as to why people aren't using it. So brands and PRs have both come, as have the influencers, and it also allows them. I've become my auntie, so I don't even see myself as the influencer anymore. I'm the auntie where people come into the inbox to say, hey, what should I do about this? I've been offered this amount, is that okay? Can you put me in touch with, you know, X person? So, you know, it's worth its weight in gold just for that alone.
You're becoming an agent in your own right.
I'm an agent in my own right. That's not offering, you know.
Take the 10%.
Yeah, I should take a 10%.
You're on stage in front of a lot of agency representatives today. What would you say to our attendees at the summit today about how they can make things better within their own agencies and organisations?
I think a lot of it is to think about it not being a them and us situation. I think sometimes it feels like, you know, we as influencers feel like, you know, are we being cheated? Are we getting the best deal? And I don't know what it's like on the other side, but it doesn't always feel like a fair playing field. So to remember it's not them and us, to remember that there's more to it than just, you know, follower numbers. What does your brand actually need? If it's engagement, if it's, you know, there's so many other ways that we can help you. So, and to let us be creative in our own rights, it's really frustrating when you're kind of given a brief and it's, we want you to take a picture like this, and it's, you know, so specific.
Hold this water.
Yeah, there's that. It's like, there's no creativity in that. You know, trust us to do a good job. Trust us that we will do the best for you. Trust, like put the trust in us to do a good job, and also to think out of the box as well. So if you've got your tried and tested list of influencers that have done a good job, that's brilliant, that's great. But throw in a new one every now and then, you know, take another look. Are there, you know, the amount of influencers that come out like monthly is, you know, astounding. So update your list once in a while. I need to update my influencer list. It started at 250. It's about 500. There's probably like another 500 on the waiting list that I've not vetted. But, you know, it's just, you know, keep moving and trust and, try something new.
What makes a great brand partnership for you as an influencer? When does it like really come together?
When they take the time to chat and listen. So, you know, when you feel that they have looked at your work. Right. So I know it sounds really silly and it's really simple, but I've got a 5-year-old and a 13-year-old, but I still get people asking me to do dummy adverts and things. You know, so it's taking the time out to actually get to know the person who you want to work with, giving them space to be creative. So like having a really good level of communication, so you feel trusted, you feel you can, you know, ask questions and try something new and be like, I know you didn't quite ask for this, but I really want to try out this new technique. Can I do this as part of the campaign? So communication, trust, and just feeling valued, that you're not a tick box. I think as a Black female, someone nearing her 40s, you know, influencer game, it feels very much that a lot of time it's a tick box to, okay, well, I've got that minority ticked off. But, and it could be the case, and if that's the case, fair play, but still expect us to do a good job and still value us when you choose us for campaigns.
So why are you partnering with MSL from your point of view?
Because they're awesome. So they do, MSL have, you know, I feel loved with MSL. Like, you lot could ask me on a Friday to do something Saturday morning at 9:30, I'll do it, because there's a really great, don't take me on that. There's a really, I said that to camera, but you know, there's a really great relationship. I feel trusted. I know that MSL actually care. It's not lip service. They care about the gender and the racial and, you know, all the other intersections, the pay gap between them. And they care as much as we care. And, you know, the fact that they partnered with me and with Charlotte shows that they did their research and they wanted to make sure that this wasn't just going to be a one-time thing where we just did a survey, oh, look, here's the results. It's, no, this is going to be long-term and we're going to work and, you know, do iterations of this to make sure that there is actual change and make sure that, you know, we do hold ourselves responsible and do make sure that, you know, change happens.
And were you shocked personally by the results of the first US wave of the research?
Not a bit. Not at all. I think we see it. I think I've seen it even in, you know, I'm an OG blogger. It's been like 12 years, 13 years of blogging. I've seen my peers where we started and, you know, we all had the same really awful looking blogger blogs with the HTML code, but you did yourself. And I've seen the journey that my peers have taken and the difference between where my white peers have ended up and us is really stark, and you just see that growing over the years. So we've seen it in real time, you know, going to the same campaigns, going to the same events, but them being paid and us not, or, you know, them being sponsored and us not. So it's not a surprise, unfortunately.
Okay, well, I hope it improves. Yeah. Neil, you're halfway through the UK research. Can you give us some sneak peek insights into what you found so far?
Sure. So, surprise, the pay gap exists. It's looking like the pay gap is approaching mid-20s, 22-25%. We still probably have another couple of weeks to go. So one of the things we want to do is ask the industry to help us promote this survey. The more data we get, the more change we can make. So yeah, the pay gap is with a few weeks to go, less than the US, but still obviously fairly significant. Some of the themes are unsurprisingly the same. Lack of education, demands from the influencers that we've interviewed for a call to be kind of more open about rates. Also, I guess, you know, one thing that's really interesting as well is kind of humanizing influencers, to build on what Tin just said. Like, you're not negotiating a cheaper email campaign, right? You know, you're negotiating with someone's livelihood. And integrity comes at a cost, right? We as an industry have to do the right thing in these spaces, and a lot of influencers are basically getting agencies just coming to them going, well, this is all we've got, and they start the lowball negotiation, rather than saying, as Tin said, what's the partnership, or how much do you charge, or let's discuss. It's a hardball, starting from a position of, this is all we've got, can you do it or not? And what that does, it perpetuates a cycle where influencers, particularly if they are kind of mid or micro, they're trying to grow their brand partnerships. They're trying to show that they can be a value partner to a company, and they'll take the money. And then that creates a perpetual cycle where everyone is just continually kind of lowballing, unless they have the time, as well as being, a mother, father, and doing another job to put that effort into their Instagram, their TikTok, their blog. In a lot of cases, they don't, so they're just stuck in this sort of cycle of just receiving a hardball, low offer from agencies, rather than us coming together and having integrity and saying, no, this is what the rate should be, and actually in some cases say, no, we can pay you more. So removing the functional aspects of it and treating people as human beings and partners is a really important thing to increase the levels of integrity in the industry. I mean, it's the data is showing similar challenges to the US. So for us, it's not just producing a PDF white paper report. It's actually, our work starts after we publish the data. How can we come together to educate? How can we come together to open the conversation around rates? This is not a one and done. This is something that we're going to commit to continue to discuss these issues and try and solve them if we can.
And survey's still open for people who want to take part?
Absolutely is. You can find us on our MSL social channels. You can find the link there.
Your point about the fact that you're dealing with human beings and real relationships and livelihoods rather than assets is an interesting one, isn't it? Because you have a list of influencers, you pick a few who might work, and you're not necessarily thinking about that human relationship you need to have with them.
And it's, for a lot, it's their jobs, or it's the difference between, for me, it's not my full-time job. I work during the day and I fit it in. And there's many weekends where, I will put a campaign first and be like, come on, kids, we need to go to the park and you've got to be happy. And let's pretend it's not raining outside because this is actually a summer campaign.
Good
and,
luck with that.
we do all of those things and we put so much work and effort into it. So if you're not feeling like you're actually being treated like a human at the end of it, that's quite, upsetting. But more than that, it could be someone's mortgage payment. It could be the difference between going on a holiday or not, or, being able to save up for a deposit on something or not. But, so if you're just being lowballed and, if you can add that extra zero, add the extra zero, please, it makes such a difference.
So what can the PR industry do? How can we move forward together?
So I think, from my perspective and from MSL's perspective, what we wanted to do is to open the discussion. The first thing is to make these issues something that we all feel a bit more comfortable talking about. Of course, we don't have the solution. Of course, we're looking inward as well in terms of things that we need to improve and need to change too. But I think the key thing is just not ignoring the problem, which I think we kind of have been a little bit as an industry. As we said up front, we've known there's a challenge, but we haven't had the data to prove it. So of course, this is this research that we're doing in the UK and in the US. It's it's open to all. Like, we want to share the data that we collect via Creative Commons. Once we publish the report, you can all have the data. You can inspect it yourselves. But the important thing is to keep talking and to keep working out what the data is to tell the story and create change.
And do you think part of the problem is that we have a diversity problem within the agency world, so you're not necessarily seeing things through a diverse lens in the first place when it comes to looking at the influencers representing the brands you work with?
Yeah, I think that's potentially an issue too. MSL in the UK is proudly a home to fresh and diverse talent. So we have gone through our own journey the last couple of years, and our industry is reflective of the world outside, versus some agencies that I've worked at that have not been so diverse and inclusive. And I think for us, the work that we do is naturally representative of the market, because I look around my office and I see an amazing fresh range of different heritages, different sexualities, different genders. And that makes, I think, better work and more diverse work naturally.
And so when are we going to see the final results of the UK research?
We are looking, originally it was going to be June, which is very soon.
That's next week now.
I know, right? But then we had this lovely opportunity to speak today. So we're going to continue the research and keep it open for another couple of weeks. We're probably going to close the research mid-June with the research being published in July. And we hope to have as many conversations with as many people about the data as possible. This is all our solution. This is all our problem. It's all in our power to solve this together. We want as many different perspectives as possible. This is something which needs to be solved from multiple different perspectives, from agencies, from influencers, from clients. We want everyone to come together and find a solution.
Tineke, how useful is this kind of research going to be for you and your secret WhatsApp groups of influencers when you've got some data? Is that helpful?
Very helpful. So it will help bolster what maybe we feel we already know and what we're already doing. So it's really nice to be able to, refer to actual facts and figures when you're responding to emails, or, just to also let you know that you're not alone. So knowing that this is something that's widespread and, this is how the whole of the UK feels, or the whole of the US is coping, will help, help with us as well.
And if both of you could say one thing to PR professionals that they can do on Monday morning to start improving the way they're working with influencers and to reduce this gap, what would you say?
Look at the human, look at, the person behind the list and numbers, and also just to look at your lists and think, what can I do differently?
Okay. Neil?
You stole my one. I think for me, the key takeaway is that integrity is not free.
Yeah.
I think we as an industry have to have the courage of our convictions. If we really genuinely care about this issue, let's stop lowballing. Let's also educate clients as well as influencers, as well as each other. Sometimes we're under a lot of pressure to get projects out the door for the right fee, and also as agencies we're under pressure to drive profitability, but not at the expense of the human. And that's the key takeaway for me.
Okay, thank you both guys. Before MSL leave the stage, I know we have a short video to highlight some of the work you're doing to support the Ukraine Communication Support Network, which we've got David Gallagher talking about later on this morning. So can you roll that video, please?
Very important for Ukraine now, which courageously opposes Russia's military aggression. On February 24, in one moment, my whole life completely changed. I was forced to move from Kyiv to western Ukraine with 2 children. My husband joined the armed forces of Ukraine. We decided to stay in Ukraine to help and support our country. Our victory is critically dependent on the help of the whole world. We are very grateful for the help that we've already received from all Europeans. You've sheltered our refugees with hospitality and warmth. You are treating our kids. You are fighting with us in the information war. But our fight continues. Weapons help us on the battlefield, but communication support is no less important. Therefore, I was very happy to join the steering committee of Ukrainian Communication Support Network that was established by the PSA and ICCO in March 2022 to coordinate volunteer communication activity in support of the people of Ukraine. Now we invite communication professionals around the world to submit their proposals and projects. There are 12 main categories and applying is very easy. Representing Ukraine in the committee, we are providing feedback on the current situation and the most relevant cases, as well as promote Ukrainian initiatives for the help in Europe. I invite everyone to join our network. We will be very happy for the help of each of you because you are communication experts. Russia is waging war not just against Ukraine. It is the war with the entire civilized world, good against evil, with each of you. Please, don't stop telling the truth, since every voice is extremely important in approaching our mutual victory. Thank you, and I sincerely wish all good luck and victories to all participants of the Sabre Awards.
Neil, Tineke, thank you so much for joining me this morning. Please show your appreciation.
Thank you.
So, next up this morning,